What's going on? It's Trending Story. If it's your first time here and you want to find out new facts that will definitely make you smarter and more well informed, make sure to subscribe and active the notifications bell so you don't miss anything.
An amazing story about how the rescued wolf cub replaced his grandson and saved the old people from certain death. Grandma Clavia brought cakes and tea and took it to Grandpa Matvey, because on this day her son Vasily, who was a soldier in the Russian army, died. The couple, after they finished eating cake and drinking tea, then decided to go to the church to light candles and pray for their son. Vasily, a year after his marriage, his wife died in a traffic accident, and she left a 2-month-old child. Then he left for the army after he received a call, and when he went on a mission to Afghanistan, he died there in mysterious circumstances, and the Russian authorities were late to transfer his body, where the two parents waited for 15 days for their son's body to arrive, and they buried it in the village cemetery. Grandma and Grandpa had to take care of their grandson. The grandson was the light that illuminated their lives, as they considered it the most precious thing in their life. But one day, the little boy fell ill and died of a fever. The grandparents were very sad, and she had neither a son nor a grandson. Grandfather Matvey and his wife Clavia remained in her old country house, where they tended the house garden and went to the village to buy the food and medicine they needed. The grandparents left the house and headed to the neighboring village where the church is located, in order to remember their son. And on their way back to the house, they go to his grave in the cemetery in order to put in there a bunch of roses. It was a beautiful day, which allowed the elderly to enjoy their time on the way to the neighboring village, where they watched the cows and livestock running in the pastures, and they stopped to watch the children playing with their parents and grandparents, in order to remember those beautiful moments they spent with their son when he was young, and with their grandson who passed away months ago. After Grandfather Matvey and Grandmother Clavia finished visiting the church, they decided to return to the village and visit the cemetery before returning home. On their way to the village, they stopped at a beautiful river to rest because they got tired of the long road. It was completely empty and quiet, and the two grandparents watched over the running river. When the grandparents were relaxed, they continued their way back to the village, and suddenly they heard a groan like a little child. The two approached that sound, and Grandpa saw a small animal lying on the ground. When he approached him, he found that he was a newborn wolf. The grandfather kept caressing the wolf and told his wife to take him, but the grandmother refused and warned Matthew that his mother would go out in the meantime, and she would attack them in defense of her little one. The grandfather agreed with his wife, as she said, and wanted to ignore the little wolf, but the sound of whining, and then he picked up the little wolf's dead and insisted on taking it home. The animal was lean, tired, and unable even to stand on its feet. The grandmother remained frightened all the way, looking left and right for fear that the little wolf's mother would appear, but fortunately she did not come. The two elderly women stopped at their son's grave and placed a bouquet of roses, which they had collected from the forest, and then quickly returned home because their little wolf needed help soon. When the grandfather got home, he put the wolf on the bed and stayed by his side, while the grandmother hurried and brought him milk. The grandparents thought that the little wolf was sick because he appeared in this miserable condition, but in reality he only needed food, for she remained lost in the woods and did not eat for a long time because his mother abandoned him for unknown reasons and left him alone in the forest, struggling with death. The two grandparents brought different kinds of food for the little animal and kept watching as he was eating greedily, and when the little wolf finished eating, he went to a corner in the room and lay there, and after a few minutes he fell asleep and did not wake until it was in the morning. The grandfather and grandmother kept taking care of the little animal and made sure that he had healthy meals until he grew up, and with the passage of time, the little animal began to regain its activity and started playing inside the rooms of the house and running in the yard. The two grandparents found the wolf to be fun, energetic, and it liked to play with them, and they enjoyed spending their time with the new guest who had entered their lives. They considered him like a grandson who left them and left a terrible void in their lives. For the little animal became naughty and makes funny moves that make the grandparents very happy, and he helps them with the housework and goes with them into the field. Jim was growing rapidly, and he loved grandparents more and more, treating them like his parents and making sure to obey them and carry out whatever they asked him to do. Then the grandparents decided to keep it as a domestic animal in their house, which was accepted by the wolf who kept guarding the house all day long. The animal was well aware that the grandparents saved his life and treated it kindly from the first day they met him. So he wanted to be as good as they think and not disappoint them as long as he lives with them in their home. A year later, the wolf, which the grandparents considered their grandson, became strong and bulky and appeared with Matvi and Klavia when they went to the village to buy what they needed from the store. All the villagers were dazzled by that wolf. One day in February, Grandma Klavia decided to host a young man who was friend of her son, Vasily, in the army. The grandmother loved that young man, and when he came to her house, she felt as if her real son had come to visit her. The young man, who lived in the neighboring village, answered the grandmother's call and came to visit her on a snowy and cold day. The grandmother and that young man went to the grave of Vasily. Then they returned to the house to drink hot tea with Matvi, who remained in the house waiting for them. The three ate dinner and then drank a lot of wine. After the three had a good time and recalled all the good memories with Vasily while he was alive, the young man decided to return home. Matvi was worried about the young man and told him to sleep at his house tonight and leave in the morning because he was drunk and the weather outside was cold and rainy and the vision was difficult. But the young man insisted on leaving. The two elderly people watched as the young man as he left the house, and he began to walk in the snow while he was swaying, because he was drunk. After the young man disappeared from sight, he heard Matvi and Klavia, a voice coming from afar asking for help, which made the grandfather put on his coat and went out to search for the young man. The grandfather was also drunk and walking with great difficulty, which made the grandmother nervous and kept waiting and waiting at the window. Meanwhile, the wolf came out and caught up with the grandfather to search for him in that stormy weather in the middle of the darkness. And moments later he returned, dragging Grandpa Matvi, who was unconscious, from his coat. Then Grandma rushed to help him and brought him into the house. The wolf did not stop here, but returned to get to the other man, who later found that he had fallen into a hole and could not get out. Minutes later, the wolf appeared dragging the young man who was suffering from a sprain in his ankle, where he led him to the door of the house. Then the grandmother took him into the house and put him and her husband in front of the stove and left them to rest there. The wolf did a difficult and dangerous work and saved the young friend and the grandfather, who also fell in the snow and lost consciousness and returned to his place to sleep, and nothing had happened. While the spouses remained to look at him with respect and appreciation for everything he did for them, as he returned the favor to them and did not forget what they had done for him since they found him a weak pup in the woods about to die.
Thanks for watching. Please like and share the video in social networks. We'll be right back to you as fast as we can.